Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Concordia University's Fourth Space. Thank you for joining us once again for Writers Read Presents Our Voices. This section is the alumni and faculty readings. To help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from Fourth Space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. We're going to keep it really short and sweet, so we're just going to hand it right on over to Tamsyn Riddle. Welcome.
Thank you. For those who might not have been here this morning, we're having a full day event of readings. So now we will have some readings from some of our amazing faculty in the creative writing program, as well as some alumni of the program. We'll get to hear some of their work, and I'll hand it over to Rachel to read the first bios.
Hi, welcome back. We'd like to start with Emily Lafleur, who is a writer from Montreal. She holds an MA in English and Creative Writing from Concordia University, and her poetry has appeared online and in print in The Void, Expat Press, Peach Mag, Metron, Valium, and The End, among others. She is the 2024-2025 recipient of the Suzanne Gian Briscoe Fellowship for Experimental Writing by Women, and is currently working on a project about the poetics of conspiratism. Please welcome Emily.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I miss Concordia a lot. So thank you, Writers Read. Thank you, Concordia. Thank you, all the readers this morning, all the students. You guys were awesome. And so I thought I would do something a little bit fun and gimmicky for this, because my current project is still kind of like secret, not ready to share that work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read one piece from every workshop I took. I did my undergrad and my master's here. So they're short, but it's kind of funny because you can see like my changing concerns, but also kind of broadly changing poetic concerns through this. So from my bachelor's. So this is from fall, winter, 2016-2017. Do you and I extend probably the mouth of the deck? Your hair gets wet and the bridges get wet. The poster from the double feature gets wet. So a wet dashboard has some internal logic. Almost, I wake up when you do. Fall, winter, 2017-2018. What I said I wanted earlier in the day, what I said before dressing, was something noise canceling like breakfast, a fruit bought for the clam basket and not for eating. And the cupboards lined with paper, not our mother's gray, but maybe other mother's gray. What I said undressed was that a seam is a mistake or the potential for one, and there's nothing to wear anyway. In this house, we only have one kind of thread and no acetone, and we are meticulous with hemming so the curtains fall a certain way. What I said I wanted earlier in the day was an afternoon with the bowls left out, the whole thing, a careful arrangement of our ceramics, the greens and the non-greens and the glazed in each room, the process through which the table came to stand in for all tables. Why, if I drew the living room, I would draw the partition as an arch. Okay, fall, winter 2018-2019, I had to take a prose workshop, which was never my thing. I also did take a fiction workshop in my first one, but you guys don't need to know about that. So this was kind of prose, but I was always trying to not really do prose and turn it into poetry. You stand between the sheer white curtains for so long that I begin to wonder whether you're watching television through someone else's window across the street. I come and stand beside you, but just a little bit further back because I want to seem aloof and indifferent to the fact that you never replied the last time I wrote to you. I expect you to walk back to the party, but instead you look at me and say my name, and then, this view is lovely. I answer yes, and then something about the kind of light that comes into the living room in the morning. We stand there for a while longer, and I spend the whole time hoping you won't notice that I've pinned the tops of the curtains together to hold them open at the same distance, knowing that you would resent me for falsifying the view, or at least the way it's framed. And that brings me to the end of my bachelor's. So this is when the shift happens. So, fall 2020. To say they distanced, to say it wasn't about spit, what began as a statement of rot after reading a book about rot, emerged this is not yet thinking, and when would become when reception of pictures, and when and so on. I didn't expect any stunning originality, the feeling of having done something terrible like no God. When, at the reception of sense impressions, pictures, emerge, this is not yet thinking, still in bodies it wasn't about spit. You can afford to be sentimental because I can't do anything to you. A fitness kick and biotin, I still can't do anything to you. And the joke about perception lands wrong, and when it does, and so on. Emerge this awareness of fluid, but you can be sentimental, having found peace inside the house with the printed bricks, just not mine. When reception of pictures, and when interception of pictures. I've done something terrible, something like no God, something like the spray of the drawings. Then we begin to know something, then we really begin to know something. Emerge, this is not yet true. No God between us, we all used to get so close, on several occasions, and you would love me driving, and you would love me receiving. Emerge, this is not yet thinking, but it's so simple. My body is acted upon by some surface. What is communicable now? What more is communicable? To say it was about spit is to say something terrible and unlike me. And when would become when reception of pictures, and when would become too complicated, I can't do anything to you but leave. Fall 2021. Because I was among the unchurched, I wore him down until, and invoking the primitive light, in my arms she wants me, she warns me, she warm and smooth, and again was reminded by the stream that shame and guilt are structurally different things, if I have one and he has the other. I was not among the seekers either, and I wore myself like that thing you do with your eyes, habitually I think, like anything else these days, habitual. However, those uses combined with the droning, her droning, that comes from, that cops from, I said software again for only the second time, and like any other name, like the thrust of the term, with my God, my God. Winter 2022. I lie, and I find my way back to you, Irene. You don't want me to come anymore. You said that before. And then in the end, I was invited to feel shame all the length of a carpeted hall anyway. From any cardinal direction I find you, Irene, I find you so recognizable in any climate, tracing my minute fears, by remembering hard whether I was bothered by leaving or if it was a long, long exhalation. You have to get out of your car and swim to it. Now I'm praying a shape instead of a sound, Irene. Now I'm lying again and ending up here, at the end of 3 flashes at the back of the head and of my own mouth. Irene, you're lower down, and how sweet is your habitation. How sweet to be here, how sweet and how busy and idle. It was very much like rolling down a hill and then ending up somewhere with all new flora. The earth is clean dissolved, Irene, the earth is moved, and the clutch hand doesn't know it yet. He says so, but he says a lot. And in the end, I accepted every invitation to feel shame all the length of the hall. I lie, and I let myself into the fishbowl, Irene. I got to you in 12 minutes flat once, and I won't pull that off again. My final one, winter 2023. Come forth and bear my arms with your arms. I have the unworthy. Each of these gray hairs is devoured. Why were we not concerned with blessing? A blessing, right hand to the heavens, left supporting voice. These are serpents, not sweet, breathing with milk. I will dig up old cruelties and dig up your houses. Was it not the body, the rain as thick as gates? Like dogs, you lie on the earth. Like the sun, you're mostly useless. I venture through thick walls and doors and beg for a hand. God bless, this is how I know there are people beside us, also praying for sight. Some are old, but I am older. My hair is longer. I have more sports and more songs. I have ripeness, I have fleece. I have dwellings made of earth mixed with heat. God bless these tents, did I command that? To me, the day is eyeless. I know well enough how to be a hypocrite in the form of helpless policy. I know the pleasures of replying. I am both the speaker and the tempter, drawing the night as a solemn curtain. I have brought the sweat with me all this way. I have rent his forest, and so I rent him too. At last I catch him in the form of sonship, false, vacant, in the earth, the cleaving ground, garments as wide as the climb, garments with fog hovering around. Lead me in thick darkness, and in the morning I can go clean. This is the right way. I know it by the sound that our feet make. Be obedient to the time of grace. I was born to laugh at affection. O consumer, holy and forgiving, filled with the offenses of the sun, which we know is covert. What soft voice could ever threaten bitter things? Why are men bound beneath the heavens in form? Now milk is cut off from the mouth with difficulty. Now the drone reaches its crawling length all around us, consuming all the flowers and fruits. Now my paradise has fallen, and my voice is past. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for that lovely journey through your studies here. Now I'd like to invite up Gillian Z, who is the author of multiple poetry collections, including Pearling Rambutan, Redrafting Winter, and Panicle, which were all finalists for the Quebec Writers Federation A.M. Klein Prize for Poetry. I just realized how poetry heavy this section is. We like prose too, it's okay. She studied creative writing and English literature at Concordia and received her PhD in, oh my gosh, don't make me say French, études anglais from Université de Montréal. Her forthcoming publications include a book of essays and poems and 3 books for children. Please welcome Gillian.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you to Writers Read and the organizers for putting this together. And also thank you to Fourth Space for having us in your space. I'm going to read a selection of poems from actually an older collection called Panicle. I've been spending time with it because recently, in the last couple of weeks, because I've been working with a couple of translators from Uruguay, and the Spanish translation comes out next month. And I don't speak Spanish, and I don't read Spanish, but it's really nice to return to these poems through this other language, and it's both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. So I'm just looking at my time, 1:17. So I'll read a selection from here. Calligraphy. This is how the beginning sounds. An ink stick grinding against stone, a dark circling like ancient gears. The water blackens from soot we paint with the burnt ashes of pine trees. A quiet task lies before us, to compose even before the brush touches the paper, to know where each stroke will stay, to, as they say, have a bamboo completed in your chest. I wish I could show you as I write this, the shame at my own frailty, the thin starts that lead only to blunders and irrecoverable nonsense made palpable through age or drink. To write heart in our language takes only 4 strokes, but so much depends upon the first mark. The long hook tugs at the word center, holds everything together. The final 3 strokes resist and search for blanker spaces. A skilled calligrapher will tell you that they should give the impression of a sail filled by the wind, but a poor first stroke, and the others will look like lost cottonwads tossed by the wind. The wind knows flaws, knows the infinite roots of everything it blows and how nothing comes back the same way. In calligraphy, if a stroke falters, you must begin the word all over again. Perfection, we believe, is possible with repetition. But the brush is in my hand, and my hand grows stiffer. The hibiscus at the window closes in the evening. At least here at my desk, I can start again and write, this is how the beginning sounds. This is my heart. Look, at least there's that. The next few poems come from a series of what I call sound series. I had picked up at random from a used bookstore a book about sound in cinema, which I don't know too much about. But I really loved what how the filmmakers spoke about sound. So I'll read a few from this series, sound number 1. And it opens with this epigraph. What kind of sounds can you put on a film underwater? Only the bubbles? So sound number 1. The breaking water tucks you in as wholly and triumphantly as a baptismal gown. It is as loud as anything else that breaks when it reaches its peak. Laughter, solids, the day, countries, parties, lovers, and ice, but not as loud as clouds, voices, or the next line of a poem. When you push through the water, past the gawping fish that realize you don't belong, everything resounds with your final cause. It sounds blue, and it comes from all directions. Sound number 2. There are things I want to show you, like the empty pause that encircles desire, or how Klimt knew that a woman bends her neck that far for a kiss only if she really wants it. I want to show you how quiet it gets when you're in the company of someone who no longer loves you. I want to remind you of that unseasonable memory when I bloomed the reddest flowers. Who knew an instant could be so endless and vacant? I want to point out the stony space that the dead take up, that an epitaph is always too short, and that death's impetuous timing is measured by all the books that will never be read. But more than anything, I want to show you something smaller, how the smell of winter at night has the same crisp scent as the sound of the word biscuit, the touch of vellum in your mouth. Sound number 3. I try to write about a one-night stand, but all I can remember are the whiskey-drunk gropes and your name set on the night table along with your keys. One got lost in the dark, the other fell to the floor and was found by morning. A poet from the Ming Dynasty writes about a one-night stand. The poet includes the fleeting happiness of the moment, the salinity of separation, and the dipping moon. The night is audible, as heard by the clock striking midnight and the mandarin ducks down by the water that grind against each other until all the plum flowers are gone. I'll close with this poem called Panorama. I see in the audience my students, a few of them, and if you've been my student, I've probably made you write a list poem at some point, or maybe twice. So I thought I'd take this moment to share a list poem here. It's called Panorama Roma, and it opens with this line by John Ashbery: "These accents seem their own defense." This is really lovely, by the way. Thank you, Writers Read, for having me. I'm so happy to be with this wonderful lineup and to see Bridget and Stephanie and Faith and to hear Emily read. So I'm delighted. Panorama. This is the clacking of a wooden alligator against cobblestone. This is a train as it rushes along the A-line. This is a water that splashes out of this fountain or that one. This is a sun that drapes over our heads. This is a light that falls on Matthew. This is the incessant squawking in the morning. This is all the blood of Holofernes in one line. This is a paperclip bend of the centaur's back. These are the folds of Aphrodite's stomach. These are the knees of Augustus. These are the eyelashes of the barista. This is a wide, broken mouth of the amphitheater. This is more than all the kisses exchanged on a bench, beneath a tree, in an alley. This is the confetti tossed before we could arrive. This is the old forest gulp of grappa. This is how you say frizzante. This is the quiver of rigatoni as it's set down. This is a golden retriever that won't leave the shade. This is where the discus was heading. This is where Goethe blinked rapidly. These are the starlings swooping overhead. This is a melt of gelato This is the ancient stench of the Arno. These are all of David's Goliaths. This is a hand that reaches for God. This is where you look up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jillian. I think we all know we're pretty privileged with the faculty members that we have in the creative writing department, but it's so rarely that we get to hear them read their own work. It's such a pleasure to hear that today. Now I'd like to invite Bridget Ha, who is a queer Canadian Korean poet from Toronto, up to read. She's currently an MFA candidate at Cornell University, and she holds a BA from Concordia, where she received the Gabrielle Safdie Award in Creative Writing, along with a whole bunch of other awards, I think. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in The Walrus, Gulf Coast, The Margins, The Ex-Puritan, The Capliana Review, and elsewhere. She's the winner of the 2023 Valiant Poetry Award, and her debut collection of poetry, Fused Body, is forthcoming in March 2025, or April maybe, in about a month. So look out for some release dates there. Please welcome Bridget.
Hi, thank you so much for the intro, Rachel, and thank you to Writers Read for having me back. It's so good to be back. I was so excited to get to read with Stephanie and Jillian and Faith and Emily. I'll be reading a little from the forthcoming book. I think the release date will be, I think it's March 20, I know it's March 27th. Yeah, so I guess keep an eye out for that. This is Camera. In my school days, I liked to be alone in the box. The box was where I made my time beautiful. It had 2 switches, light and air. I found it did not matter to music about air. I could not do anything about light. Without it, the piano lost its deep edges. And anyway, light always finds a way in. A box unfolds from many places. Some have a pinhole, through which light rivers from eye to eye. My housemate then had eyes only for his camera, for he practiced the solitude of photography. He felt it was his calling. Calling or no, he was never any good at listening. He did not like to go outside to take pictures. What was there to see inside, you might ask? A world asking to be composed, a fistful of keys, empty box of cigarettes, raw chicken breast greasing the counter, rich yellow of unwashed months, a new bloom of black mold, beard hairs feebling in the kitchen sink. One night I woke to the sound of a camera shutter closing. I slept in a darkness that could only be achieved deliberately. Hard lid on the night spill. He knew this about me, and yet. That is all I have to say about this night. A photograph bears what I might call the imprint of a soul. In those days, I was sure I had one. The gravest injury he had given me was this: a shimmering cord axed at the root. Not my soul in that image, but his, streaming through the little crack in the door, pooling on the fresh film of my body, when I began to believe I did not. Only one thing to do after such an event. I made myself aperture. There was music firing at me from all sides. A focused note made a striking image. No other students ever sought out the box. I filled it with intention, mine alone. Of course, I did not like that taste flooding my body, but like it or not, a life holds many remains. Space was only one of them, and yet it was all I had. Space for what? What came one evening, I was alone. With my Schubert, I mean, we liked our privacy. Here was a precise and even knock on the box. The box answered with a crack. I ran to shut off light and air. I fluttered to the door. Through the pinhole, I could see her violin. Her first words to me were these: I need accompanying. Alone, I hear you. The box closed all around us. Lightless looking, went both ways. Sitting together in the dark, we were like two hands. What were we waiting for? For each to swell with absence, for I to unfold from its edges, I dancing like a wick in candle flame, I who became a tree who stayed the wind. I is no way to live, it is no way to want. Sing me away from the world. Sing me away into I. In the beginning there were these two, light and air. In the beginning not even I was. She lifted the violin like a shaft of bright wind, unwound a voice like a stream of slow melting tears. Each note wore a backwards face, asked questions I could no longer answer. Was it a dream, or did it only have that quality of dreams, convincing dreamers of something that for a long time they have already known? As in the lays of winter cold and ancient rain, songs bottled by the bird that you once were. The bow hung on the tip. No room to breathe. Could I see her body, or was the body in my image only mine? The degree of personhood was mounting, that is to say, I was cut down the middle, I split on the shards of listening, not a wound, but a crack of an egg's shell out of which spills golden light, translucent air, not a wound, but another way out of myself. Yes, I will accompany you forever as two parallel rivers seeking the same ocean. Did you want to know what I felt? I always dream of brides tucked under your arm. The violin said nothing. I could still understand its soul. Animacy is a kind of gender. It is a matter of gradients. Who decided that more soul animates I than it, which might bear the world? Certainly it had no say in the matter. It merely means matter. It lacks the rational soul of us, the falsehood. Like a photograph, it is always invisible. It is not it that we see. What is it that we see? What is it that we crush with seeing? A photograph shatters an object's animacy, one less piece of soul inside. Perhaps it is this felt absence, that which Barth called the punctum. If this moment were a photograph, afraid of crushing you, my gaze holds the violin. If it is a fallen dream wife, it speaks in the wide eye of violin. I takes its time. It waits for time's return. This is Silence of Yarvanpah. Must empty in order to be wrung. I could give up bathing in cold water. There are days to empty. There are days I must. The oak is cracking the sky black, night yoke streaking down the middle. Inside of some pianos there's a pool, plinking into which are my ghost notes. Winter makes you hungry to eat at the piano, fingers slipping on the old grease, keys like fat butter sticks, like a mouthful of oats, like a groan of honey. Winter makes you unstick the violin, coax the drawer from the hinges. What will fit in the violin lung? Thoughts in the shape of coins, sand in the shape of salt, any hour of water. A bow trembles like a folded wing. A bow whistles in the iron wind. A bow is meant to be leaned on. A bow is a beautiful crutch, steadies the cold water nerves. Tongues of ice elating the trees. And I think I'll just read one more from the book, which is actually a poem that I wrote for Jillian's and Carson course last year. This is Yellow. All around us are yellow things, like when I come through the door and you peel the stubborn weather from my cold blue face, or when my rough skin smells like your smooth skin as though we were fried in the same oil. Yellow, like when we were a pair of wriggling fish hauled up in the same net, our backs unsettled by sunlight. Or was it when I seized a fistful of your cotton nightshirt, when no part of me but the hands, hardened, heavy, heedless with hunger, when only my hands remembered what color was? Oh, childhood, that warm and weatherless room from which you are missing, it was once yellow too. Just check the time. And I just wanted to read a couple new ones. They're quite a bit, they're drafty, but they're what I've been working on most recently. This is Elegy for a Sister. A sister is a girl who looks more like your mother than you do, leaves you alone at the dinner table she didn't help set. A sister is who a girl is confused for, parts your black bangs to see you, a mirror flattering herself. A sister is a spell with which to call your mother, takes your hands as though promised to her. A sister is who a girl confuses herself for, never appears in your dreams. Not me, but my sister, you thought, waking to find her in your bed. The late afternoon filled the lake with light, your feet, 2 green jewels, fingered by the sun, foot flapping like a fish, foot bottomed with blood, brown paper-wrapped fish, stains on the unwrinkled sheets. 2 girls whistle the same tune. If they're sisters, call the tune a kiss. Fish flapping like a hand, tell me, tell me, tell me. Watch how Alumni does, watch and follow. Don't you remember? Don't you remember? A sister is a reminder, if you go crazy, at least go crazy beautifully. A sister won't do anything to you. A sister will let you go intact. A sister's hand holds the hand of a clock, a different finger every minute. A sister's eyes fill with lake in the early morning, hand flapping like a fish. When is it right to call a girl a ghost? When she has been wronged. You mean when she is no one's daughter, with no name for her mother to call her by. When she cries out, sister, sister, sister. Don't you remember? You remember, right? Fish flapping like a fish has hands and feet as it falls mouth first into the night bright lake. This is Sonatina. As a baby, you relied on others to remember things for you. Unbroken surface, memory made no mark on you. Snow-like, memory touched you, then disappeared. Memory-like, snow's long travel ended with your body. Your first memory of snow, the color of your skin. Your first snow of memory, grave white laughter. Snow would not survive you. You would not survive memory. Filled with not memory, not snow, your absence from yourself unmarked until your mother, remembering the body you once had, says to you. You walked early so that you would come to language late. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Can we keep you? Do we have to send you back? I guess we have to send you back. I'd now like to welcome up Stephanie Bolster, who has published 4 books, the first of which, The White Stone, the Alice Poems, won the Governor's General Award and the Gerald Lampert Award, which is a big deal. She has edited the Best Canadian Poetry in 2008, a few years ago. Her next book, Long Exposure, is forthcoming in fall 2025. Born in Vancouver, she has taught creative writing in Concordia since 2000 and lives in Point St. Clair on the Mohawk-Kanishkahaga territory. So please welcome the lovely Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really an honor to be reading in this company today. It's just been an amazing day, and I'm just so lucky to get to teach in this place and work with such amazing people. And it's also very intimidating, so I'll just say that. Okay, so I'm going to be reading 3 pieces that are from Long Exposure. It's really a series of interconnected parts, so I very much had to sort of pull them out of context. The primary and initial inspiration for the project were photographs taken by Robert Polidori, who was born in Montreal. He went to both Chernobyl and New Orleans and took photographs of the aftermath of disaster. His photographs are mostly interiors with no people in them, but you get a sense of the human suffering. That was what drew me into the work, as well as my own discomfort with looking at this suffering as well, which was not mine, and yet I felt it. So I'm going to read a section from the Shelter Object thread, which is about Chernobyl. This is Shelter Object, Chernobyl Fire, 1986. The constellations made of fear, chaos where a shape was, stars where a roof, a fire where a place. The world asleep in its bed, world irrevocable, the heat unfathomable. They worked shirtless, already acute in hospital. Soon coffins of zinc, soon they'd gut the wards of the dead. Tried robots, but robot death seized their limbs, if they were limbs. Men scraped into a flat shovel some graphite rods and dust, tossed from the roof. Count the seconds each man done onto the next and the next of thousands, of hundreds of thousands. Liquidators past the limit got more rubles. Decades later, after a stroke, one got enough rubles for 700 grams of butter. Too late, they did not shout on May Day. 14 days it took to die, his tongue came out. Leaves just opening, the parade stands empty, the children of officials already sent away. Flash of paparazzi where radiation ate the film. Years it took to die, his organs in his mouth she wiped out. They'd wanted to be safe, they'd wanted the test done so they'd know. If an enemy struck, would the reactor survive? Disaster as likely as lightning. Men fished from a bridge, loved a fire, all colors flashing, old colors, new colors. Tourists come, the fishermen long gone. The bridge of death, they say, it's in a game online. The leaves just coming out, the forest thinly green, that first gold, then red. Thank you. This next section is from the long exposure thread, which are the poems dealing with Paul Dory's photographs of New Orleans. So this is long exposure, New Orleans address, 2005. The red dress, a crescendo, a Southern Comfort poster, a cloud of feathers on a wheelchair. Someone hung a mirror, someone bought a shoe tree, someone didn't go to the French Quarter unless visitors, or not often. Someone suspended a trio of baskets from the ceiling. Nearly half the dead over 74. After 2 days, no dead counted as Katrina victims. Barking on roofs, the hospitality of pineapple bedposts darkened. In the rooms, frames with nothing left, or the intention of rooms, planks held by nails and spaces, all our houses are. This page may be too long to read and navigate comfortably. Please consider splitting content into sub-articles, condensing it, or adding or removing subheadings. Fled to a wind-whipped stadium, a suit inside a shelter, higher ground where the jobs are, space just big enough to rest, a flame of ash, a coffee can. This was once someone's, a jacket, a chair back, a plum winced into. Google Polidori, 2 matching frames, a chandelier, the bulbs lifted like wicks, a sandal, a car mat, the debris black. The caption is an address. Around the corner, someone might live or might again. A banishment, another place, kind of time. A girl home from school slams the door, angry in a minor way the future won't permit her. No one notices the wallpaper, the 70s flock thick as mildew, foreshadowing. Only after is this before. Google Maps, enter the address, click the little orange man, drag me to the map. Lift, it feels like lifting, all in the wrist. Set him down there. A field and a bridge, the letter A in a red bulb in the field, then black. Wait a bit, the image changes. A sidewalk, a driveway in hot grass. Where a house was, a patch barren of grass. Shadow of a tree across the barren patch. Sometimes of year, they might be chicory. As I was reading that, I was thinking about the way in which Google Maps has changed over the years, which shows how long ago some of these poems were written. And this part of the manuscript is where I turn the lens onto myself. And this was written in 2011, I have to admit. Even almost as long ago as when I edited that collection. And so not only are my kids much older now than they were in this poem, but they're strange little quaint elements of this poem, such as mail actually being delivered to the house. So it shows me how when my poems are vintage, it's not a good thing. Anyway, this is at the end, Point Claire, If I Were, 2011. If I were to go now, like this, my head forward into the screen, the girl in the crib would cry a long time. The older girl at daycare, until the last friend left and no one would come, and late charges accrue, and the teacher would call home and no answer, and cell and no answer, and his cell and voicemail he wouldn't check, and the grandparents' machine would be full, and she would stay with the girl. The baby asleep again by then, the crib rail chewed, a smell of diaper and hunger. Her breaths on the monitor. The garbage can emptied by the curb, the driveway empty, the car still at the garage, the bill unpaid, a bag of flyers on the steps, dusted in snow, the mail in the vestibule where it fell. The teacher calling the numbers again, the teacher driving by the house with the girl in her daughter's car seat, her daughter with a sitter who kept calling. The teacher ringing the bell, waking the baby to wails. The house otherwise still. The teacher calling 911. The sirens of fire, ambulance, police, whoever first. The door broken down. Someone entering, someone calling, someone finding the baby. The girl crying, the teacher holding the girl, holding back the girl. Someone finding. My body leaning as though aspiring. Maybe I leaned into a pain that was strange and thought I will be gone, and was gone. The screen black. Touched awake, the screen flashing, lines written before the instant of ending. The girl screaming, would she be screaming? Would she be still? The baby wailing, someone calling and no one answering. Their father back on the late train, the teacher still holding, the body by then body, the teacher turning away. The three of them holding, days of holding, the three of them forging, days of the screen and the room with the screen and a silence. The French door always closed, the younger beginning forgetting, the older beginning remembering, the one and the other unhinging. In time, the door opening, the screen awakening, the older watching mermaids, the younger upstairs with her father playing. The older learning to water the plants in the high windows, remembering Christmas when the card with the blue metallic dove. It will stay on the sill for years, or the blue bin, or the green, or the garbage. And thank you. And this last piece is a prose poem from a new project that I'm working on about the BC Sugar Refinery, which is the oldest industrial building in BC. It was founded by B.T. Rogers, built in 1890, only 4 years after Vancouver was founded as a city by settlers. And they still produce Rogers sugar in that refinery. So this is a narrative poem called Refinery. There was a place at the end of the rails, a new place, a place just beginning, now the rails had reached it. A place on the coast from which a man could ship anything, anywhere the rails went. There were fish to be fished, there were woods to turn to wood, but he wanted something else. He made a plan. He'd make a port to take a ship in, a ship from a place where sugarcane grew, tended by workers who'd come from another place to tend. In this place at the end of the rails, this building he would build would turn the cane to sugar to send east. It would make its way along the rails, and in each place, anticipation would light the faces. The man wrote a letter to the place on the map. Would it let him build the building? Would it let him make sugar from the cane? The man who ran the place said yes, he could build the building, he could make the sugar to send east. But he must hire men who spoke his language, men from places like where his people came from. The man who made the plan and the man who ran the place sang the same vision. The man with the plan moved to the place, sent the necessary letters, posted notices, hired the right men. The woods turned to wood, the clay to bricks. The walls rose up into the face of a place like in stories his parents had told from the old days, the old place. It had beams, it had stories, it had windows. It had windows that were eyes through which sun would shine. In time, a ship laden with cane arrived. The shipmen, the landmen rushed to lift the crates from there to here. The man had learned from his father how to make sugar from the cane. The men had learned from the man. These men would not rise up, would not throw a brick like the brick that killed his father. The cane turned to juice, to syrup, to golden, to white. The man glimpsed his life before him, and it was good. They sent the sugar east. The cane came from the west, the sugar went east. The sun rose, the sun set, days passed. With the wealth the man made, he made a plan for a mansion. The best of its kind in the west, it had hearths made of stone. It had rooms for the children he'd made with the woman he'd found. It had rooms for the children to come. From a hill it looked over the sea from which the cane came. The men who made sugar from the cane came and went, lived, died. The cane came from the west, the sugar went east, days passed. With the wealth the man made, he made a plan for a better mansion from which his mansion would look like a house. Enough land to expand, enough rooms for the children he'd made and the children to come. The men who stacked the stones, who made the sugar from the cane, were sleeping the evening he woke late at night in pain, and by the time the doctor came, he was gone. The house went on. In time, his wife and children moved in, the sugar moving east, the wealth pouring like rain through the roof in this place made of rain. More than 100 years, it goes on. The cane to sugar, the ships, the rails, the west, the east. Sun through the eyes, the windows, the glass thick with crystals. Nearby, under blackberries, some sleep. Others in their condos in the mansion he built and the better mansion. The man's name on the bags, the boxes, the bottles, packets, screens, the man's name in our mouths, all these years, the sweetness. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I don't think any part of that was vintage, but it's just me. Next up, and to close out a lovely day, we have Faith Paré, who is no stranger to these hallways also. Her writing has appeared in the Kapliana Review, the Ex-Puritan, Contemporary Verse 2, and elsewhere. She's performed all over the place, including here in Montreal, and has received fellowships from the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity and the Quebec Writers Federation. She's the winner of the 2024 Bronwyn Wallace Award for Emerging Writers in Poetry from the Writers' Trust of Canada, and was shortlisted for the League of Canadian Poets 2024 Spoken Word Award. Faith presently lives in Chokde, Moyang, Montreal, and unceded territory of the Ganishkahage people, where she's at work at her first collection of poetry. Please welcome Faith Paré.
Hello, hi everyone. I am so stoked to be here this afternoon. Thank you for having me, and what a truly epic lineup of readers. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge nerd and dork, and I claim all of those labels. And I absolutely loved and really cherished my time, not only learning within the context of the department here, but learning from really the the movements of the city, the movements of different kinds of writing in and outside the institution. So I'm exceptionally grateful for folks like Bridget and Emily to learn from you and absorb the work that you're doing, and definitely to Stephanie and Julian, who've both been teachers to me, and it's nice to see both new and familiar faces. So thank you for having me. It became like a game with the roaches in the hall building. Something endearing in their scurrying across the tile, veering through corridor traffic, sneaking crumbs of vegan pastries dropped at the student cafe. The university mascot was an anthropomorphic nightmare of a wasp or something. No one went to the games. It really should have been a roach, steadfast, reliable, certain to be flirting with your shoe at the urinal. Who can feel real ill toward them? They just drag their bellies along the ground, antennae twitching for understanding as if they can know anything from the bottom of the world. They could often be allies. They'd happily gobble up any morsel dropped for them of any matter. They're even cannibalistic if it comes down to it. Imagine all those generations holed up in the walls, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, skittish and knowing only of the dark. But then they began seeping into the lecture halls, bold now to come out in front of the class in broad daylight, unmoved even when a scream disemboweled the quiet. The young ones were resilient, used to the pesticide. They wanted a bite of the world, spit and sneer, and they just kept coming with their stupid, intense eyes. Some were saying the reaction time was shot from all the lead in their water, but it was scary. Like they'd snap your foot off when you went to stomp on them. They were remembering their grandparents. Soon they were chewing through the stacks in the library, encyclopedias eaten whole. They were learning. They took the elevators as if they had somewhere to be, moved in groups together, ugly brown limbs rubbing together, discoursing. It made no sense. They'd been treated so nicely for what they were, joke with, accepted at arm's length. Now they were overflowing, locking themselves in classrooms as if they owned the place, making demands, squeaking, "We shall overcome," long into the night. How unfortunate. They were never liked, but tolerated. All it takes is some fumes, a first barrage, and then occasional smokes from time to time to snuff the stragglers out. Then you can get a nice, clean slate. Thank you. What to say? Also tentative on how much to say. I was a student here, that's why I'm here. And I also came from outside of Montreal. That's not obvious, I'm not as cool as the folks who grew up here. And I had to get with the program. And so I think the history of this city that was the first opportunity to say it was a city that was my own outside of just where I grew up was an opportunity to learn the specific kinds of the specificities of the history of this place. And being in university and being one of the first people in my mother's family to go to university was also provide me with an opportunity to think about my education and education as, you know, as part of a larger institutional structure and process in this country, and to start thinking critically about it. And by doing that, I had to understand how education plays into carcerality, and it plays into displacement and into land grabbing and colonialism. And one of the ways I found myself falling into that was by understanding the context of the Sir George Williams Computer Center occupation of 1969, which is well trotted at this point. But I would always encourage folks to check out this very spectacular history of a multiracial coalition of students and community members, including those outside the university, who banded together to contest systemic racism within the administration and say enough. I think it's an excellent example of the kinds of work that we within the institution or who have access to the institution can do with folks outside of it and who feel maligned by it, especially because the folks at the front of that struggle were Black Caribbean immigrants, who I specifically come from that lineage of people. And every time I look into that building, I feel very emotional and complex about it. And I couldn't stop writing about it. So apparently I couldn't stop writing about this place. So I guess that's how a book sneaks up on you. So back to reading. Specifically, I started writing these poems to a specific woman who was a participant in these protests that I call CJH. What does it mean that you won at their game? Brilliant, obedient, the first to put down without the second back then, even now. Was it worth it? The hush up you must have carried close, like irregular French verbs or rhyme of the ancient so-and-so to be somebody. Head girl. You radiate despite the mandated pinafore in the class picture I find. Clearly clever. Startling, self-assured smile for 15. Among waves of 60s silk presses, your afro and aureole. Jeunesse dorée. In more ways than one. Could you admit that gilded skin measured your potential further than many other girls? Handled with ritualized care. You were not the first, but you were next. Your people knew what to do. Pass between hands the spontaneous tithe gathered in a tin to see you off to school. Or a neighbor. May not have much, but these good skirts from when my daughter worked at the bank. Someone had beaten you to polishing your best shoes. No use and thank yous. This was just what to do. Their gift to hold the whole of who you could one day be. You could not fuck up this gift. You did. You tripped and were somebodied. Said you would never try. Would look both ways before crossing. Prayers before supper, you promised with a kiss in the doorway, before morning school treks, always home before sunset, you promised. Then somebodied yourself, gnashing engine, backstroking your oceanic bound a year prior, but propellers hurl forward, only forward. Couldn't put back what clung like cigarette smoke you tried washing out before mom and dad parked in the drive. Headline ink, fanged heat lunging from the IBM. You tripped, glass sewed into palms, each shard unique as the flakes of your first snow. Said you would never try. Radio rasped a fire at the university. Police raid gone wrong. During knitting and evening rum. Your parents didn't notice. We are not political people. You promised. It scared them how hot in the face you'd get over justice, that tired rag. Righteous scale of your voice almost made them believe in it too. Said you would never try. They made you. I pray for justice at the foot of the indictment, and at your head, a lump throbbed from impact and mythology, would swell big enough to overtake you, become its own somebody. But you weren't the miscited legend for the time. And back home was still blue. Everyone could smell the char. Knew you tripped, but stayed polite. How was the weather? Not too cold. Judge McKay loomed over a comrade. You had no right to be there. You had no right. Canada is not a place, but something that happens to you. Thank you. I was remembering two pieces of writing advice that both Stephanie and Jillian had given me while I was in my undergrad. One of the things that Stephanie had told me was which seems so simple now, but was such a hard lesson to learn and keep learning. No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. And I had to learn how to really be surprised by my work and feel scared about it sometimes. I was just talking to some other writers here and talking about the value of feeling shocked and afraid or energized by what you're trying to say. And then Jillian also said, in every poem you do, make sure you locate yourself in it, even if it's not about you. But I wrote this one for my mom. The sky white-lipped, the trees wayfish and starving, the season marked by a dead and stinking thing on the dining table. It's chicken, though, blackened with jerk seasoning. My mother never liked turkey. She's assumed this ritual anyway, of midday hockey that no one watches, of linen napkins exhumed from the dust-caked cabinet that we're chided for wiping our greasy fingers with. Pinching the flesh on my side, she decided I'm too skinny. You're crazy, I kept saying. You're crazy. My thinly gilded achievements I must dutifully report in WhatsApp chats to aunties who never left. In Montreal, yes. No, not that school, the other one. Could she be proud of this sulk of a daughter? An eye roll personified when she broaches an opinion on the political headlines. The school play instead of sports or calculus, the all black, the throbbing bass on the other side of my barricaded door. She wept when I sheared a lifetime of waist-length hair to feel better, and then didn't. All my work, she murmured, all my work. The acrid stench of espresso on my breath made her gag. Only white people drink that shit. How, after I was taught cursive's proper curly cues, she sat me down for hours to write Christmas cards, and I hated her for it. I guffawed at her penmanship. You don't know how to spell that? In her then, a silence I had never seen, that measures the distance you've been placed beneath another. I was a bastard for that. We never dared to meet the truth a wet on before I left. Instead, a homecoming of jellied cranberry sauce, sweating, untouched in its dish. We don't know what to do with it. My mother wearing a fucking apron, as if she didn't behead chickens and cook them in makeshift pits at half my age. Outboldening the neighborhood boys, she maneuvered barbed wire and broomstick handles, chasing her out of yards. Ate her conquests with the feathers still on. There was enough food at home. It was just to show she knew how and could. Store-bought fowl on my plate. I'm the one, she says into the receiver, who's getting a real education. Sure, I know my Chaucer and new criticism, this trash inheritance. But how do I sew a button? Where do I put my feet on the coconut tree's trunk? How long can the bird live without its head on right? Never mind, I know that one. I have one more. Thank you so much. I did also want to give a real shout out to the organizers, Tamsyn, Rachel, other folks who were working on this today, Sina. The alumni panel was something that really meant a lot to me when I was an undergrad here, and I'm really glad to see also this flourishing too in the last few years of giving the mic to folks who are going here and seeing what they're working on and like getting to really just savor this broad diversity of what a creative writing department looks like, can sound like, can be. I am so grateful for the people who've dedicated their lives to teaching here and to making here. So thank you so much for having me continue to be part of this. Appreciate it. Violence happens on minefields far away. Violence happens in resource-rich jungles we learn to become numb to on TV. Violence happens when they learn which neighborhood I'm from. Newsreel indulgences of shattered windshield glass and summers of the gun. Violence happens in the islands we are from, so backward and discombobulated. Children in raggedy t-shirts scampering down dirt roads as if fleeing into the past. Violence happens in long-gone sacks of cities, bronze gods toppled as women gather scraps of mauled dresses. In black and white film of English boys hobbling on blown-off limbs, stretching, sightless, into mustard gas and mushroom cloud modernity. Violence even happens in the textbooks they'd concede. The tyranny of passive voice, the sidestep substitution in vocabulary. How lucky we are to hunch over splayed pages, ballpoint carving through textual tendon. We can read through doublespeak, through absence, rhetorical trimmings, digging to reach the thing in itself, pure and unmistakable. I want the thing in itself. Violence happens in the campus bookstore, where my receipt is scrutinized and my bag rifled through 3 times over. We do not talk about that. Violence happens in the atrium where safety bars were quietly installed during exams because engineering students couldn't stop jumping. Violence happens when I mentally note how high I hold my chin, whether I stick the code switch. Violence happens when it is plainly announced a student walked into the art building and never left. Classes resumed in the afternoon. The floors bleached before anyone could guess what happened. And on the 9th floor, I pressed my ear to concrete. I waited every day for what happened to you to leak from behind the remodeled walls, only to hear the blood in my own head. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith, and thank you all for being here. I have nothing to add. I think a lovely lineup has said it all. Thank you to our alumni, our faculty, and our students for bringing such energy to the room. Thank you all. I said that already. Okay, we have another event. Woo! The 4th of April, we have a professional panel, so look out for details. They are coming. Also, the old shout out to Fourth Space for, again, housing us for today. It's been lovely. Such a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, and thank you to everyone at Writers Read. What a wonderful event today. Thank you for coming in and activating the space in this way. We're going to be closing this event up, but just a quick reminder that all the performances, all the readings that you heard today are already available on our YouTube channel if you would like to revisit or share them. So thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.